On a fateful day in 1950, American Airlines Flight 350 took off from New York City, destined for the sunny shores of Miami. The aircraft, a Douglas DC-6, was filled with eager passengers looking forward to their vacation. Among them were families, business travelers, and solo adventurers, all excited about the journey ahead. As the flight ascended into the clear blue sky, everything seemed normal. The crew was well prepared, and the flight attendants greeted passengers with warm smiles, serving drinks and snacks. But as the plane flew over the Gulf of Mexico, communication with air traffic control began to falter. The pilot, Captain James Collins, noticed unusual radar readings, but he brushed them off, attributing them to minor interference. However, as the plane continued its route, it entered an area known for sudden storms and unpredictable weather patterns. The skies darkened, and turbulence shook the aircraft. Just as the crew was preparing for the turbulence, the plane's lights flickered, and a strange hum filled the cabin. Suddenly, the aircraft experienced a severe drop in altitude, leaving passengers gasping and panicked. In the cockpit, Captain Collins and First Officer Michael Reed exchanged worried glances. They struggled to regain control of the aircraft but found themselves disoriented. As the plane plunged lower, the crew attempted to send a distress signal, but all communication systems failed. It was as if they had vanished from the radar, lost to the world. As minutes turned into an eternity, the aircraft eventually entered a thick cloud bank, enveloping it in darkness. In that moment, a collective fear gripped the passengers as they held onto their seats, praying for a miracle. The crew, despite their training, felt a sense of impending doom. Suddenly, just as hope seemed lost, the plane broke through the clouds into a serene sky. The sunlight flooded the cabin, and the passengers caught their breath. However, the relief was short-lived. The crew realized they were no longer on their intended flight path. Desperately trying to regain control, Captain Collins scanned the horizon and saw nothing but endless ocean. They had entered an uncharted area, where no flight records existed. In the cockpit, confusion reigned. Where were they? What had happened to their communication systems? With dwindling fuel reserves, the crew made a decision they would attempt to land on the water. They prepared the passengers for an emergency water landing, explaining the situation and urging everyone to stay calm. As the DC-6 glided toward the ocean, the crew instructed passengers on safety procedures. The plane hit the water with a loud splash, and chaos erupted. Passengers scrambled for life vests and rafts as the aircraft began to sink. Against all odds, the crew managed to get everyone off the plane and onto inflatable rafts. The ocean was vast and rescue seemed improbable. Hours passed, and hope began to fade. Just when despair threatened to overwhelm them, a distant hum grew louder. A search and rescue helicopter appeared on the horizon. Rescue workers hoisted the survivors from the rafts, and as they were pulled up to safety, they exchanged stories of bravery and determination. The mystery of Flight 350 remained despite the successful rescue. The cause of the communication failure and the strange radar interference was never discovered. Years later, the story of American Airlines Flight 350 would become a legend in aviation history, a tale of survival against the odds and a reminder of the mysteries that can lurk in the skies. Passengers would often share their experiences, forever grateful for their second chance at life, and the crew was hailed as heroes for their courage during a harrowing ordeal. On a fateful day in 1950, American Airlines Flight 350 took off from New York City, destined for the sunny shores of Miami. The aircraft, a Douglas DC-6, was filled with eager passengers looking forward to their vacation. Among them were families, business travelers, and solo adventurers, all excited about the journey ahead. Little did they know that this flight would turn into a harrowing tale of survival and mystery. As the flight ascended into the clear blue sky, everything seemed normal. The crew was well prepared, and the flight attendants greeted passengers with warm smiles, serving drinks and snacks. The atmosphere was filled with laughter and chatter, as children played and adults exchanged stories about their upcoming plans. Among the passengers was a young couple, Sarah and Tom, who were embarking on their honeymoon. They shared dreams of sun-soaked beaches and romantic dinners, blissfully unaware of the challenges that lay ahead. a sudden change in atmosphere. As they crossed over the Appalachian Mountains, Captain James Collins, a seasoned pilot with over a decade of flying experience, felt a slight chill in the cockpit. He glanced at his co-pilot, First Officer Michael Reed, who was monitoring the instruments. The plane continued to cruise smoothly, but something nagged at Captain Collins. The weather reports indicated clear skies ahead, yet he sensed an unusual pressure in the air. Suddenly, the aircraft began to experience turbulence. The seatbelt sign illuminated, and the crew calmly instructed passengers to return to their seats. The jovial atmosphere quickly shifted to anxiety as the plane shook violently. Passengers gripped their armrests, exchanging worried glances. Sarah squeezed Tom's hand tightly, while a mother tried to soothe her crying child. In the cockpit, the pilots exchanged glances, trying to remain calm despite their unease. As they climbed higher to avoid the turbulence, their communication with air traffic control began to falter. Radar readings became erratic, and Captain Collins frowned as he scanned the instruments. It was as if they were flying into a void, into the unknown. Just when they thought the turbulence was settling, a loud bang resonated through the cabin. The lights flickered, and the plane jolted, sending passengers into a frenzy. Captain Collins struggled to regain control. While First Officer Reed frantically attempted to communicate with air traffic control, but all attempts failed. The crew realized that they were in a perilous situation, trapped in an area with no navigational guidance. As the aircraft plunged lower, the panic among passengers escalated. Flight attendants rushed through the aisles, ensuring that everyone was buckled in. The cabin was filled with cries and prayers as uncertainty loomed over them. In the chaos, Tom held Sarah close, whispering reassurances, though his own heart raced with fear. Moments later, the plane entered a thick cloud bank, engulfing them in darkness. Visibility dropped to zero, and the sound of the engines roared in their ears. In that moment, time seemed to stand still. The crew fought to regain control, but the aircraft felt like a leaf caught in a storm. The struggle for survival. Suddenly, just as hope seemed lost, the plane broke through the clouds into a serene sky. Sunlight flooded the cabin, and the passengers let out a collective gasp. But their relief was short-lived. The crew realized they were no longer on their intended flight path. They had drifted far from Miami and were now lost over a vast ocean, with no land in sight. With dwindling fuel reserves and no communication, Captain Collins made a critical decision: they would attempt an emergency water landing. He and First Officer Reed prepared the cabin for impact, explaining the situation to the passengers in a calm yet urgent manner. The crew instructed everyone on how to brace for landing, urging them to stay calm as they faced the unknown. As the DC-6 glided toward the ocean, the roar of the engines grew louder and the cabin vibrated with intensity. Passengers exchanged worried looks, gripping their armrests tighter than ever. The moment of impact came as a jarring shock. The aircraft hit the water with a loud splash, and chaos erupted in the cabin. Passengers scrambled for life vests and rafts, desperate to escape the sinking plane. Sarah and Tom worked together, helping others while trying to keep themselves afloat. The crew remained calm, directing everyone to the emergency exits and encouraging them to evacuate in an orderly manner. A desperate fight for survival. As water rushed into the cabin, the crew managed to get everyone off the plane and onto inflatable rafts. The ocean was vast and rescue seemed improbable. The passengers, now floating on the dark waters, looked around in despair. Hours passed, and the sun began to set, casting eerie shadows on the waves. Hope began to fade, and fatigue set in as the reality of their situation sank in. Tom, sensing the growing panic, took charge of their raft. He encouraged everyone to stay together, sharing stories and keeping spirits up. Sarah held onto him tightly, her heart racing with both fear and admiration for his bravery. As night fell, the ocean became a vast expanse of darkness, and the chilling sounds of the waves surrounded them. Just when despair threatened to overwhelm them, a distant hum grew louder. A search and rescue helicopter appeared on the horizon, its lights cutting through the night sky. As the helicopter descended, the survivors waved their arms, shouting in unison. Hope surged through them, and tears of relief filled their eyes. rescue, and reflection. Rescue workers hoisted the survivors from the rafts, and as they were pulled up to safety, they exchanged stories of bravery and determination. They were taken to a nearby naval base, where medics assessed their conditions. The passengers and crew, though shaken, were grateful to be alive. In the aftermath of the incident, investigators launched an extensive inquiry into the disappearance of Flight 350. Despite thorough searches of the area and analyses of radar data, the exact cause of the communication failure and the strange radar interference remained a mystery. The flight's disappearance sparked numerous theories, ranging from equipment malfunction to extraterrestrial involvement. In the following weeks, the survivors reunited to share their experiences. They formed a bond that transcended their terrifying ordeal, meeting regularly to reflect on their shared experience. Among them were families, friends, and those who had been strangers just days before, now united by their brush with death. As the years went by, the story of American Airlines Flight 350 would become a legend in aviation history, a tale of survival against the odds and a reminder of the mysteries that can lurk in the skies. Passengers would often share their experiences, forever grateful for their second chance at life, and the crew was hailed as heroes for their courage during a harrowing ordeal.